Hi and welcome to another video. In this video we will tell you the real true story of where Santa Claus came from and how it became what it is today. From the very beginning, Santa Claus, also known as Father Christmas, Saint Nicholas, Saint Nick, Kris Kringle, or simply Santa, is a legendary character originating in Western Christian culture who is said to bring children gifts during the late evening and overnight hours on Christmas Eve of toys and candy or coal or nothing, depending on whether they are naughty or nice. He supposedly accomplishes this with the aid of Christmas elves, who make the toys in his workshop, often said to be at the North Pole, and flying reindeer who pull his sleigh through the air. Santa is generally depicted as a portly, jolly, white-bearded man, often with spectacles, wearing a red coat with white fur collar and cuffs, white fur-cuffed red trousers, red hat with white fur, and black leather belt and boots, carrying a bag full of gifts for children. This image became popular in the United States and Canada in the 19th century due to the significant influence of A Visit from St. Nicholas. Caricaturist and political cartoonist Thomas Nast also played a role in the creation of Santa's image. Though most often portrayed as white, Santa is also depicted as black or of other races. His race or color is sometimes a subject of controversy. We always thought it's what was in a person's heart that truly counted. Not a person's skin color, but in today's society is debated. Mainly because of what people have in their hearts is the problem. Now writing letters to Santa Claus has been a Christmas tradition for children for many years. These letters normally contain a wish list of toys and assertions of good behavior. Some social scientists have found that boys and girls write different types of letters. Girls generally write longer but more polite lists and express the nature of Christmas more in their letters than in letters written by boys. Girls also more often request gifts for other people. Many postal services allow children to send letters to Santa Claus. These letters may be answered by postal workers or outside volunteers. Writing letters to Santa Claus has the educational benefits of promoting literacy, computer literacy, and email literacy. A letter to Santa is often a child's first experience of correspondence. Written and sent with the help of a parent or teacher, children learn about the structure of a letter, salutations, and the use of an address and postcode. Santa Claus has partial Christian roots in St. Nicholas, particularly in the high church denominations that practice the veneration of him, in addition to other saints. In light of this, the character has sometimes been the focus of controversy over the holiday and its meanings. A number of denominations of Christians have varying concerns about Santa Claus, which range from acceptance to denouncement. Some Christians, particularly Calvinists, dislike the idea of Santa Claus, as well as Christmas in general, believing that the lavish celebrations were not in accordance with their faith. Other nonconformist Christians condemn the materialist focus of contemporary gift-giving and see Santa Claus as the symbol of that culture. Psychologists generally differentiate between telling fictional stories that feature Santa Claus and actively deceiving a child into believing that Santa Claus is real. Imaginative play, in which children know that Santa Claus is only a character in a story, but pretend that he is real, just like they pretend that superheroes or other fictional characters are real, is valuable. Actively deceiving a child into believing in Santa Claus's real-world existence, sometimes even to the extent of fabricating false evidence to convince them despite their growing natural doubts, does not result in imaginative play and can promote credulity in the face of strong evidence against Santa Claus's existence. Children will eventually know that their parents deceived them. But where did it come from? Saint Nicholas was a 4th century Greek Christian bishop of Myra, now Demra, in the region of Lycia in the Roman Empire, today in Turkey. Nicholas was known for his generous gifts to the poor, in particular presenting the 3 impoverished daughters of a pious Christian with dowries so that they would not have to become prostitutes. He was very religious from an early age and devoted his life entirely to Christianity. In continental Europe, more precisely the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, the Czech Republic and Germany, he is usually portrayed as a bearded bishop in canonical robes. December 6th is St. Nicholas Day, the day designated by the Catholic Church in its calendar of saints to honor the man named Nicholas, who was Bishop of Myra, which is now a part of Turkey, and noted for his saintly life. His birth date is unknown, but December 6th is the generally agreed upon date of his death, and it is this date that is celebrated in the Catholic and Orthodox churches and which is a secular holiday in many countries. It was the Dutch who brought St. Nicholas to their colony of New Amsterdam, now New York, in America. However, after the British took over New Amsterdam and English became the language of New York, St. Nicholas' name evolved from the Dutch Sinterklaas into the Santa Claus that we know today. Reformation and its opposition to the veneration of saints in many countries on December 24th or 25th. The custom of gifting to children at Christmas was propagated by Martin Luther as an alternative to the previous very popular gift custom on St. Nicholas, to focus the interest of the children to Christ instead of the veneration of saints. Martin Luther first suggested the Christ kind as the bringer of gifts. Martin Luther saved the tradition of present giving, especially to children, when it appeared under threat from other reformers. But Nicholas remained popular as gifts bearer for the people. The eventual choice of December 25th, made perhaps as early as 273, reflects a convergence of Origen's concern about pagan gods and the Church's identification of God's Son with the celestial Son. December 25th already hosted two other related festivals, Natalis Solis Invicti, the Roman birth of the unconquered sun, and the birthday of Mithras, the Iranian son of righteousness, whose worship was popular with Roman soldiers. The winter solstice, another celebration of the sun, fell just a few days earlier. Seeing that pagans were already exalting deities with some parallels to the true deity, church leaders decided to commandeer the date and introduce a new festival. Father Christmas dates back as far as 16th century in England during the reign of Henry VIII, when he was pictured as a large man in green or scarlet robes lined with fur. He typified the spirit of good cheer at Christmas, bringing peace, joy, good food, and wine and revelry. As England no longer kept the feast day of St. Nicholas on December 6, the Father Christmas celebration was moved to December 25 to coincide with Christmas Day. One image being John Leech's illustration of the Ghost of Christmas Present in Charles Dickens's festive story A Christmas Carol, 1843, as a great genial man in a green coat lined with fur who takes Scrooge through the bustling streets of London on the current Christmas morning. Images of Santa Claus were conveyed through Haddon Sundblom's born on June 22, 1899 and died on March 10, 1976. It was depiction of him for the Coca-Cola Company's Christmas advertising from 1931 to 1964. The image spawned urban legends that Santa Claus was invented by the Coca-Cola Company or that Santa wears red and white because they are the colors used to promote the Coca-Cola brand. And in 1955 he also made a painting of Aunt Jemima. And in 1957, Sundblom's illustration of the Quaker Oats man helped to popularize the brand. But they recently changed to a slimmer face. And in addition to his advertising work, Sundblom painted hundreds of pin-up paintings. In 1937, Charles W. Howard, who played Santa Claus in department stores and parades, established the Charles W. Howard Santa School, the oldest continuously run such school in the world. In 1912, the actor Leadham Bantock became the first actor to be identified as having played Santa Claus in a silent film. Santa Claus, which he also directed, included scenes photographed in a limited, two-tone color process called kinemacolor and featured the use of detailed models. Since then many feature films have featured Santa Claus as a protagonist, including Miracle on 34th Street, The Santa Claus and Elf. Now they have two Santa Clauses. For the racist people in the world. In this day in which we live. At the Disney parks and resorts and can be seen in Fantasyland area. During the holiday season, and we are not endorsing this place for 1 minute. Disney is not what it used to be. It has been co-reputed and gone in a way. And Mr. Walt Disney would not have approved of the way they are doing his business. He started. Disney said, I am personally thankful that my parents taught me at a very early age to have a strong personal belief and reliance in the power of prayer for divine inspiration. Deeds rather than words express my concept of the part religion should play in everyday life. I have watched constantly that in our movie work the highest moral and spiritual standards are upheld, whether it deals with fable or with stories of living action. Both my study of scripture and my career in entertaining children have taught me to cherish them. Thus, whatever success I have had in bringing clean, informative entertainment to people of all ages, I attribute in great part to my congregational upbringing and my lifelong habit of prayer. You cannot blame the man who started Disney. You have to blame the people who run it now. The top shareholders of Disney are Robert A. Iger, Christine M. McCarthy, Alan N. Braverman, Vanguard Group Incorporated, BlackRock Incorporated, BLK, and State Street Corporation, STT. Just like you cannot blame Sam Walton for the way Walmart is now. Jim Walton, Alice Walton, and Rob Walton are the top 3 individual shareholders of Walmart. In the cartoon base, Santa has been voiced by several people, including Stan Francis, in Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer, 1964. And Mickey Rooney was the voice in Santa Claus is Coming to Town. He subsequently voiced the character of Santa again in The Year Without a Santa Claus, 1974, Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July, 1979, The Happy Elf, 2005, and A Miser Brother's Christmas, 2008. Ed Asner, in Elf in 2004. And John Goodman was in A Year Without Santa Claus in 2006. And Keith Wickham is a British voice actor and screenwriter who provides voices for both the UK and US versions of Thomas and Friends. Santa has been described as a positive male cultural icon. It was never about a race issue. St. Nicholas was a Catholic bishop born to a rich family helping the poor and needy in the town, especially the children. Now the Santa Claus of the red and white suit was a made-up character just for adverting purposes by artist Haddon Sundblom's depiction of him. Santa is really the only cultural icon we have whose male image does not carry a gun and is all about peace, joy, giving, and caring for other people. That's part of the magic for caring people, especially in a culture where we've become so commercialized and hooked into manufactured icons. And so much racism and hate and genders. And thank the lucky stars he did have a Mrs. Claus. Or they would say he was gay. Santa is much more organic, integral, connected to the past, and therefore connected to the future. Now TV producer Jonathan Meath, who portrays Santa, in 2011. The wife of Santa Claus is first mentioned in the short story, A Christmas Legend, 1849, by James Rees, a Philadelphia-based Christian missionary. In the story, an old man and woman, both carrying a bundle on the back, are given shelter in a home on Christmas Eve as weary travelers. The next morning, the children of the house find an abundance of gifts for them, and the couple is revealed to be not old Santa Claus and his wife, but the host's long-lost elder daughter and her husband in disguise. Since 1889, Mrs. Claus has been traditionally depicted in media as a fairly heavy-set, kindly, white-haired elderly female baking cookies or mending clothes somewhere in the background of the Santa Claus mythos. She sometimes assists in toy production and oversees Santa's elves. She is sometimes depicted in her youth to have had red hair. She is usually depicted wearing a fur dress of red or green. Her reappearance in popular media in the 1960s began with the children's book How Mrs. Santa Claus Saved Christmas, by Phyllis McGinley. Today, Mrs. Claus is commonly seen in cartoons, on greeting cards, in knickknacks such as Christmas tree ornaments, dolls, and salt and pepper shakers, in storybooks, in seasonal school plays and pageants, in parades, in a department store, Santa Lands, as a character adjacent to the throne Santa Claus, in television programs, and live-action and animated films that deal with Christmas and the world of Santa Claus. Her personality tends to be fairly consistent. She is usually seen as a calm, kind, and patient woman, often in contrast to Santa himself, who can be prone to acting too exuberant. In the United States and Canada, children traditionally leave a glass of milk and a plate of cookies intended for Santa to consume. In Britain and Australia, sherry or beer and mince pies are left instead. In Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, it is common for children to leave him rice porridge with sugar and cinnamon instead. In Ireland, it is popular to leave Guinness or milk, along with Christmas pudding or mince pies. After the children have fallen asleep, parents play the role of Santa Claus and leave their gifts under the Christmas tree. Tags on gifts for children are sometimes signed by their parents, from Santa Claus, before the gifts are laid beneath the tree. So you can see there is no such thing as Santa Claus anymore. And for your other Christmas celebrations that are not biblical. For Emperor Constantine, inserting Christ into pagan winter festivals was basically a civic compromise. Christianity adopted pagan traditions to make it more familiar and attractive to convert to, especially for the masses who celebrated pagan traditions. Consider the pagan origin of our favorite Christmas traditions. The Christmas tree comes from the pagan tradition of Roman the bringing greenery indoors to decorate in the middle of the winter, especially around the winter solstice, the shortest and darkest day of the year when people needed cheering up. Giving gifts, the tradition of exchanging gifts came from Saturnalia, the Roman pagan winter festival when gifts were given in honor of loved ones who died the previous year. Of course, no one can argue that modern-day commercialism, and people being trampled at Walmart on Black Friday, isn't completely out of hand. Christmas lights, pagan tradition on the solstice symbolizing the return of light after the shortest day of the year. Pagans used to light candles and fires during rituals to lure back the sun for longer days. Mistletoe, a symbol of fertility for pagans and Druids, mistletoe was considered a divine plant symbolizing love and peace. For Druids, it was a tradition to kiss underneath it during the winter solstice. There's no way around a dark truth: mistletoe is a parasite. Look it up, you will find out. The Yule log, based on pagan customs, and influenced by Scandinavian solstice traditions, traditionally a tree trunk was dragged to a large fireplace where it was to burn for 12 days. From this comes the 12 days of Christmas. They put wreaths over their doors and brought whole evergreen trees into their homes in order to protect themselves against the evil. The burning of this large tree or log eventually became the Yule log tradition we know today. The Catholic Church itself has admitted that they set Jesus' birthday and Jesus was not born on this day. And there is no way to prove it biblical. But on the feast of the cult of Mithras in order to convince the pagans of Christianity. And that's just one of the many examples of this practice. That the actions of the Catholic Church have so ensured that paganism continues to exist in all facets of our society, contradicts the words of God commanded in the Bible. And do you remember what Jesus himself said? Ye hypocrites, well did Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouths, and honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Matthew 15 verses 7-9. Now the truth is the truth. Now we will leave it up to you in what you want do. 'Cause remember you will account to God of heaven on Judgment Day. Same as us. As far what we will do on this Christmas and any other. We do not celebrate it. We will read our Bible of the story in Luke chapter 2. And that is all. No special meal and no family. And we get no material gifts from no one. We have the gift of Jesus Christ. As our loved ones are gone and we're the only one left. So since we know the real truth, we know Jesus Christ was not born on December 25th. And nowhere in the Bible God holy words does it mention it. Isaiah, one of the prophets, only told how he would be born and where they never give no special day when it happened, and they did this 800 years before it came to pass. The apostles and gospel writers Peter, Matthew, Luke, John, and Paul recorded the fulfillment of many of Isaiah's prophecies that pertain to Jesus Christ. By citing Isaiah's prophecies of the mortal Messiah, these writers demonstrated that Jesus was indeed the promised Messiah, of whom Isaiah had prophesied 7 centuries earlier. So vital are Isaiah's messianic prophecies that even Jesus Christ himself cited this Old Testament prophet and then declared that the prophecies were fulfilled in him. See Matthew 13:13-15. And we will leave you with this from Paul. In 1 Corinthians 13 verse 11 we read this, When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Now some of you will be wondering which holidays they should celebrate now. The Bible also gives a clear answer to this. In Leviticus 23 God commanded the Israelites which festivals they should celebrate. It should be pointed out that there is no trace of Christmas or even Easter to be found. Therefore, these holidays are not biblical. The Sabbath, Leviticus 23 verse 3. The Passover, Leviticus 23 verses 5-8, and this is not Easter. This communion according to Luke 22 verses 19-20 and 1 Corinthians 11 verses 26-28. The Feast of the Sheaf of First Fruits, Leviticus 23 verses 10-14. The Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, Leviticus 23 verses 15-22. The Feast of Trumpets, Rosh Hashanah, Leviticus 23 verses 23-25. The Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, Leviticus 23 verses 27-32. The Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, Leviticus 23 verses 33-43. So basically it is not that hard to do. Some Christians will not keep these for the simple fact they said they're not Jews. Well, if it was not for the Jewish people, then they would not have known of the God of heaven now, would they? But you see, they want to put everything back on Jesus Christ, saying they do not have to keep the 10 Commandments or none of Jewish traditions. So they are Gentiles, Christians, or adopted. But Jesus Christ was Jewish and raised Jewish, and they are his chosen people. Even thought some Jewish people do not consider Jesus Christ as the Son of God and the Messiah. Commit to dedicating 1% of your time each day, only 14 minutes, to praying that God would bring peace to Israel, Psalms 122 verse 6, and establish her once again as a light to the nations. Isaiah 49 verse 6. We thank you for taking the time for watching this video. Please check out our website. Link is in the description below. And we hope we have shed light on this for you to understand how this come to be to what it is today. We pray you and your family to come to know Jesus Christ as your Savior. Call to him today, he is waiting for you. Please stay safe. And thanks again. Well, see you next time.